Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something that feels like it's straight out of science fiction.
Right.
How do you actually train an AI to simulate a psychedelic trip?
And we're going to follow this incredible engineering journey. It's not just about making trippy visuals. The real mission was to see if they could mimic how the human brain processes reality and then...
And then distort it.
Exactly. Find that digital switch and just flip it.
That analogy to the human brain seems critical for this whole thing.
It's everything. Think about it. When you see a cat, your brain doesn't just, see the pixels.
No.
It abstracts it. It creates a concept of a cat. Researchers call that the latent space. It's a mental reconstruction.
It's the meaning of the cat.
Precisely. And that's why when perception is altered, the distortions aren't just random noise. The cat might start to look like it's melting or its fur pulses.
Because the underlying idea of cat is what's becoming unstable.
Yes. Not just the raw visual feed. So if you want an AI to trip in a way that feels meaningful, you have to build that conceptual core first. It has to understand what it's seeing.
Okay, so where do you even start with that? Building a semantic brain for an AI.
You start with the foundation, the classic tool, an autoencoder.
The first attempt, I take it, was pretty simple. A naive autoencoder.
Yeah, very straightforward. You keyed in an image, it encodes it, squishing it down into a list of numbers, that's your latent space, and then a decoder tries to build the image back from just those numbers.
And ideally, you get a perfect reconstruction on the other side.
Almost perfect. But here's the problem. That simple autoencoder,
Yeah.
it's kind of obsessed with the shallow details.
Like what?
Geometry and color. So you could have a picture of, say, an oil spill and a close-up of a marble.
Okay.
And in the AI's mind, in that latent space, those two images might be right next to each other just because they both have swirling colors.
It completely misses the point. It knows the look, but not the meaning.
It has zero semantic understanding. And that's the gap they had to bridge. To fix that, they turned to a really powerful model that OpenAI released in 2021 called CLIP.
Right. CLIP was the big one for connecting language and images.
A total game changer. The way it works is, well, it's pretty elegant. You give it an image of a cactus, and CLIP gives you back a unique string of 512 numbers.
Oh.
But, and this is the magic part, if you give it the word cactus, you get almost the exact same 512 numbers.
So it's proving it understands the concept, not just the picture.
It's encoding the idea of a cactus, but the challenge is you can't really reconstruct a picture from just those 512 numbers.
You've got the meaning, but you've lost the visuals.
Right, which led them to this brilliant hybrid solution. They kept the autoencoder, but they made it do double duty.
How so?
So the encoder still crunches the image down, but now you have two decoders working at the same time. One is trying to reconstruct the original image perfectly.
And the second one?
The second was trying to turn that same latent space into the 512 CLIP numbers.
Ah, so the encoder is forced to hold both kinds of information at once.
Exactly. It has to contain enough data for the visual look and for the semantic meaning. That was the first big step.
The foundation.
And as soon as they laid that foundation, they ran straight into a brick wall. A huge one.
Which brings us to the next big challenge. Just scaling this thing up.
The dream was to train this on high-resolution images, 1080p.
Because distortion is just going to look better with more detail.
Of course. But the parameter count for a network this complex at that resolution it was something like 4 billion.
Whoa. Okay, that's not something you can train on a home GPU.
Not unless you're a massive research lab. So they had to get clever. They found a workaround using an open-source model, the Stable Diffusion XL autoencoder.
And this is what they call the sandwich technique.
That's the one.
Okay, you have to break down the sandwich for us. How did that solve the 4 billion parameter problem?
Okay, so think of the SDXL model as the two pieces of bread on the outside. It does the first big heavy lift. It takes that huge 1080p image and compresses it way down to a much more manageable 128 by 128 latent.
So their custom network never even sees the original huge image?
Never. Their autoencoder, the meat in the sandwich, only has to deal with that pre-compressed 128 by 128 chunk.
It compresses that even further.
Right, down to their tiny 32 by 32 by 32 conceptual latent space. Then the process reverses. Their decoder brings it back to 128 by 128, and the outer SDXL layer blows it back up to the final 1080p image.
That is incredibly clever. What did that do to the parameter count?
It was a game changer. Took the trainable parameters from, that 4 billion estimate down to just a few tens of millions.
Suddenly the whole project was actually possible.
Feasible. And after training it on about 350,000 images, the first tests looked great. Reconstructions of single images were fantastic.
But then came the real test, interpolation.
Right. This is the moment of truth. If the AI really gets it, moving from one concept like a car to another like a tree should be a smooth, continuous morph.
But that's not what happened.
Not at all. They describe the result as a distorted, noisy mess.
It completely failed to connect the dots. Why?
The diagnosis was a fragmented latent space. When they actually plotted out the data, they saw that their conceptual map wasn't a single continent. It was more like an archipelago.
Disconnected islands of meaning.
Exactly. An island for animals, an island over here for indoor scenes, another one for cars.
And if you try to travel between two islands, say from a squirrel to a living room, you end up in the ocean.
You land in a conceptual void. And the network has no idea what's supposed to be in that void, so it just spits out noise. It was time for a huge architectural rethink.
Okay, so this brings us to refining the architecture. The goal now is to connect those islands.
To make the whole map continuous and smooth. And for fix number one, they turned to a concept from 2013, the Variational Autoencoder, or VAE.
How does a VAE solve the island problem?
Okay, think of it this way. A normal autoencoder maps a concept to a single sharp point on the map. A VAE maps it to a slightly blurry cloud instead.
A region instead of a point.
Yes. And crucially, it adds this force during training. You can think of it like digital gravity. It's called KL divergence loss. And it pulls all those little concept clouds toward the center of the map.
So it's forcing them to overlap. It's filling in the empty ocean between the islands.
It fills the voids. It makes sure that the space between car and bus still looks something like a vehicle. And it worked. The interpolations got way smoother.
But fixing one thing always seems to reveal another problem.
Always. When they tried to distort the model now, they saw this ugly, repeating 32 by 32 pattern all over the images.
And 32 by 32 was the size of their bottleneck, their core latent space.
Exactly. The problem was the type of network they were using to shrink the image, a convolutional neural network, or CNN.
What was the issue with that?
CNNs work by looking at small, local patches of an image at a time. It's like it was chopping the image up into 32 by 32 squares and analyzing them one by one.
So it understood the texture of a brick, but it had no idea it was looking at a building. It was missing the big picture.
It had zero global context.
Yeah.
Which led them to fix number two, attention layers.
Inspired by that famous paper, attention is all you need.
That's the one. They added self-attention layers into the network. And what this does essentially is allows every part of the network to see how every other part of the image is related all at once.
So it forces the network to see the entire composition, the global context.
Yes. So the VAE fixed the continuity, attention fixed the global context. The latent space is now conceptually beautiful, smooth.
But there was one last problem.
Blurriness. The reconstructions were now fuzzy. The network was trying so hard to satisfy the VAE's rules and keep everything smooth and connected that it started sacrificing visual sharpness.
It was prioritizing the meaning over the photorealism.
Right. A blurry mess. So how do you force it to be sharp again?
What's fix number 3?
You bring in an adversary. They borrowed an idea from generative adversarial networks, or GANs, and they introduced a new network called a discriminator.
The art critic.
The art critic. Its only job is to look at the main network's output and say, is this a real photo? Or is this your blurry reconstruction?
So the main network, the forger, has to learn to fool the critic.
Which puts this immense pressure on it to produce perfectly realistic, sharp images, all while keeping the VAE and attention improvements.
And that monster of a system, the CLIP-aligned Variational Autoencoder Transformer GAN network, that actually worked.
It worked. The blurriness was gone. The interpolations were these smooth, organic, seamless videos. The digital brain was finally ready for the main event.
The digital trip.
So first they tried the old method again, just scaling the network parameters.
The thing that caused the patterns before.
Right. And the new model was way more robust. It produced some interesting distortions. But when they applied it to a video, it just flickered. It wasn't the right way to do it.
Tweaking the architecture wasn't simulating that drifting inaccuracy of the brain.
No. The method that actually worked was much more direct. Latent noise injection.
They injected noise right into the conceptual core, into the latent space.
Which brings us all the way back to our starting analogy. The AI isn't hallucinating pixels.
It's hallucinating a drift in meaning.
Yes. And the results were apparently very compelling. Fluid movement, pulsating colors. So, of course, they had to get some peer review. They showed the clips to two friends.
And the first friend, a professional they called Buzz, gave some really insightful feedback. He scored it a 6.5, maybe a 6.7.
Right. And he praised the movement, how you couldn't quite pinpoint what was moving, which he said felt very authentic, and the pulsating colors, too.
But his big criticism is, for me, the most interesting part of this whole thing.
The lack of organized, recurring geometric patterns.
Right. No fractal tunnels, no mandalas. The AI couldn't produce that kind of structured geometry.
Which is fascinating. It suggests that there's some fundamental geometric processing layer in our own visual cortex that this AI, for all its complexity, just hasn't replicated yet.
Another layer they haven't digitally reconstructed. Meanwhile, the second friend was way more enthusiastic,
Yeah, gave it an 8.5. Said it was very close to their own experience.
which gave them an average score of 7.6. And this whole thing, from that first simple autoencoder to this complex gen, took them 3 months.
3 months of intense work, yeah.
It really just goes to show, to build a system that can fail conceptually, you first have to build a system that can understand conceptually.
And that's the big takeaway here. The most effective distortion didn't happen by messing with the network's architecture or the raw pixels. It happened when they subtly injected noise into the semantic core.
Into the latent space, it all comes back to distorting the meaning.
So we want to leave you with a final thought on this. If creating a simulated trip in an AI requires that AI to understand images based on their meaning, not just their pixels, what does that tell us about our own perception?
Is the very nature of that subjective experience proof that our own brains are operating on this abstract semantic map before they even worry about the perfect fidelity of what our eyes are seeing?
What are the implications of living inside a semantic map?
An amazing journey into the digital mind.